Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective.
Yeah. Happy Valentine's Day. Do you celebrate Valentine's Day? Do you care about Valentine's Day? Am I a dope for putting a Valentine's Day background? Probably. But happy Valentine's Day to those that celebrate and those that don't. We love our made-up holidays. It's never been a huge one in my family. I remember back in the day, probably my fondest memory, and this is Valentine's memory, was back when I was in high school, and I got a random carnation. They used to be able to send like carnation grams on Valentine's Day. I got a carnation from somebody my senior year of high school. I didn't know who it was. It's a secret. And that was a really big deal. You know, you would always hope that when they came into the classroom with the flowers that, you know, they'd come in with 6 of them, and you would hope you were the one of the 30 students that was getting a flower. I got a flower. Yeah, I know. Such a charming little story. Happy Valentine's Day for those of you that do celebrate or don't celebrate. I'm Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. We're not going to talk love on this show because that's not what we do here on Fantasy Sports Daily. We could talk love if that's what you want to talk, but I don't think you're paying for a psychiatrist or psychologist to help you out there. So let's talk some sports. What are we talking about today here on the show? By the way, Ray Flowers. You can follow me on Twitter, X, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, all those places at the Ray Flowers. The show is Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com, Monday through Friday at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Today we're going to talk some baseball and football as we're doing. That's kind of how the show is playing out right now. Still enough football going on. Let me ask you all a question by the way. I've expressed openly that I'm kind of tired with football. Now, again, this is after a whole season. I do football and baseball year round, as you're all aware. I never have time off most of the time. Third to half the time I'm doing 2 sports anyway, because, you know, in football, during baseball season, I'm working on football. During football season, I'm working on baseball. So I'm kind of with football. I don't think football needs to be talked about 365 days a year. The numbers say otherwise. Do you like it that we talk about football? Would you like it to be all baseball? Would you like us to talk about other sports? You can always leave a comment in the chat rooms, whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter X. You can hit us up in Discord over at FantasyGuru.com as well. What are your thoughts? Do you like this, the way we're putting this together? Would you like more baseball talk? Would you like more football talk? Would you like us to get the guys on to talk some college basketball or NASCAR or hockey? You know the drill. Let me know there. By the way, Facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ, YouTube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork, Twitter X @FantasyGuruSite. You can leave comments throughout the show. We'll see them. We'll address them. You can ask questions, all that kind of good stuff. So avail yourself of that opportunity. We got a lot of big name players to talk about in Major League Baseball today. Some smaller names too. We've got signings. Things are finally happening. We're getting all those reports about guys being in great shape or losing weight or being healthy or not healthy. So we'll talk about some of those guys here in a few minutes. Acuna, Arenado, Clayton, Kershaw signed. Trevor, Megill, and Ryan Presley for those of you looking at bullpens. What are the Rangers and Twins doing with their pitching staffs? A lot going on to discuss, and we'll do that here. We'll also visit with Tyler Buecher today. By the way, those people that missed Russell Clay yesterday, everything's fine. He'll be back on the show next week. Don't worry about it. Everything is okay, as we anticipated it was yesterday, even though he wasn't here. Tyler Buecher will join us today. Tyler is going to give us his Super Bowl thoughts, kind of a wrap-up of the game, and then we'll move on from that for sure. And then we'll talk about some of the topics we were planning on talking to Russell about yesterday. I figured since we tossed it up there on the screen, we might as well carry it over and get some of those answers if some of you were jonesing for those answers yesterday. I'm Ray Flowers of FG. We can make that better. There we go. Look at that red behind me. Red is my favorite color, by the way. Don't really know why. I guess boys, they say traditionally are blue or red. I don't know if that has anything to do with anything. My brother was blue. I was red, for what it's worth. I'm 2 years older than my brother. Speaking of, going back to high school and everything like that too, my brother and I were 2 years apart, 2 years and 2 days. I was born late. He was born early, so we almost had the same birthday. I never had a problem with my brother. He did his thing. I did my thing. We were both great at sports. He had the chicks. I had the school. Like it was. I know so many siblings just hate each other and they fight all. I let my brother hang out with me and my friends. I let my brother hang out with the older crew. My older crew friends accepted him. I had a great relationship with my brother. Still do. Hi, Jeff, if you're watching. Hopefully you have that relationship with your siblings too. And if you don't, hey, it's Valentine's Day, even if it's not a romantic thing. Share the love with a family member. Why not? Reach out. Say, hey, bro, hey, sis, I love you. Oh, I'm so sentimental here. I'm really not. I'm just saying it because it's 9 o'clock in the morning here on a Friday. Okay, let's talk a little bit of sports. Ronald Acuna. Ronald Acuna and Spencer Strider, obviously two huge unknowns heading into the season. The expectation for both is that they might miss the month of April. Maybe they're back toward the end of it. Strider having the elbow surgery, the knee surgery for Acuna. Acuna basically said that, or has basically been said, that the GM, Alex Anthopoulos, said this, that Acuna won't play in the outfield in any official spring games. So that's not a surprise. Again, we're not really expecting Acuna to play in the month of April. Maybe, but we're not really expecting it at this point. So he's not going to play the outfield in any games. He will probably do some DHing, though, which is really nice to hear. He's able to go out there and swing the bat and not just take batting practice, but get to face guys. That's obviously a help in his recovery from his injury, so that he'll be able to hit the ground running, as they say, once he's cleared to play in the big leagues this year. He also said, Acuna, that he's not going to run much to start. He says he's feeling about 90%, and reports are strongly suggestive that his recovery this time around is better than the last time he hurt his knee, so that's good news. Obviously, in the case of Acuna, last time he hurt his knee, he came back, he ran like his pants were on fire. So oddly enough, when he came back from his previous injury, he didn't have the power, but he could run. Now, who knows if that'll be the same scenario that plays itself out this time? Maybe it'll have no impact at all this time. Maybe he learned from the last time what he needs to do. Maybe the injury's the same but different. He's older, he's more mature, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see. This will be one of the huge storylines that we continue to follow all throughout spring for any little nuggets of updates. But right now, Acuna may or may not play in the month of April. He is said to be feeling good. He's not going to play the outfield. They're going to slow play things, let him DH a little bit. For what it's worth, Acuna, let's check out his ADP. I want to say his ADP is really high. Let me pull this up. I want to say it's inside the top 30 overall. So we look at the NFBC, the National Fantasy Baseball Championship. We look at, let me set the parameters for the dates, the month of February only, because we only want the dates as I look down at my calendar like I don't know it's the 14th because I'm a dumb guy. Okay, here we go. The dates have been set. Oh, no, they haven't been set because I don't know how to type. There we go. Ronald Acuna's ADP in the month of February at the NFBC is 28.9. So right at the start of the third round. That's where people are taking the chance on him. What do you think about that? Think that's a good chance to take? I think that it's a fair chance to take. I think that it's always tough to draft, and I said this a lot with players. It's always tough to draft a guy early that you know is going to miss time. I've got this internal debate. I've got the Tout Wars draft coming up in a couple of weeks. I have the first pick in that draft. It's a 15-team league. Acuna probably won't be there. I assume he'll probably get taken a couple picks before me. He'll probably get in that league. They'll probably jump the ADP a little bit. But what if he's sitting there? Do I do it? It's hard not to if he's your second guy, or especially if he's your third guy in a 12-team league. Then I can sign off on it a little bit more and feel a little bit more comfortable about it. So yeah, we'll see how it goes, but that'll be very interesting. Angelo's got a question. Does this mean Ozuna the athlete? I don't think so, Angelo. Ozuna is not a very good defensive player. He's 34 years old now, so they don't want to have that. They'll have Profar, who they signed in the offseason, probably play left field. Michael Harris will obviously be the center fielder. And then in right field, it'll probably be a combination of Kelenic and Brian De La Cruz. So I would anticipate, even with Acuna missing time here to start the year, that Ozuna will not play in the outfield. He played 162 games at DH last year, so he should qualify at outfield this season. And with the way we're sitting right now, I'm not anticipating, Angelo, that he will play outfield. So likely to be UT only this season is Marcell Ozuna. Okay, let's talk about the next guy up, Nolan Arenado. And this one is, we've talked about Arenado a lot. We've talked about, Bregman, and he finally signed. We talked about Pivetta. We talked about Pete Alonso. There's been some guys that we've talked about a lot in this preseason with Major League Baseball. And Arenado's been kind of the guy removed from the free agent market, right? He's been the guy who's on a team, but we're going to see move. And I've talked about this before. Nolan Arenado is going to make the Hall of Fame. Like that's going to happen, barring something crazy, something off the field almost, I have to think at this point. His overall game with the bat and with the glove is elite for the third base position. He doesn't he doesn't want to be there, I guess. I guess that bottom line is he doesn't want to be with the Cardinals anymore, and they wanted to move on from him. And we heard all off season that was the plan. In fact, their GM, John Mozeliak, said that their number one priority this offseason was to trade Arenado. That was their number one priority. Not to sign A or B, not to develop A or B, was to trade Arenado. Well, here we are on the 14th of February, as people are reporting to camp and all that. Arenado is still part of the team with the Cardinals, and in fact, it's to the point now where the GM Mozeliak basically said the odds are higher now that he's going to be the starting third baseman for the Cardinals, and he's going to be on another team. So this is one of those scenarios where Arenado's a 10-5 guy. He's been in the big leagues for a decade. He has control of where he wants to play. They can't just randomly trade him without his permission. He gave him a list of names of teams he'd go to, and there hasn't been a fit. One of the problems they're running into is Arenado's do a lot of money, and the Cardinals have to eat a lot of that money. So the Cardinals aren't really they're not going to get a good return. They're not going to get any, upper end prospects or, it's just not, if they're going to move Arenado in his big contract, they're going to have to eat a chunk of that contract to even get a serviceable player back. So that's probably been part of the problem. Arenado's performance last year dipped. He had the back issue, was on the field all the time, but as we've discussed, his performance, lagged. The team that's acquiring him, they're not going to want to pay a huge chunk of what is he making? $30 million? Let's look it up as I say that. I think it's $30 million. Might be even more than $30 million in the next couple of years. Let's see here. Arenado is due 9 years, $275 million, meaning I don't have the breakdown. I'm not going to look it up here on the show, but he's due roughly $30 million, 2025, 2026, 2027. It's a lot of money for a guy that is looking like, kind of a league average offensive player at this point. So that's been an issue. But the bottom line is we're looking at a scenario where it seems very, very likely at this point that Nolan Arenado, for better or worse, is going to be the third baseman for the Cardinals on opening day. He'll probably hit fourth or fifth. He'll be in a run-producing position yet again. He's 34 years old in a couple of weeks. Here he goes. They were hoping to kind of, I think, start things anew with the Cardinals. Like Goldschmidt is now with the Yankees. They were going to move on from Arenado. They're still going to have Arenado at this point. So there's always a chance he gets traded still, but with his list of teams, unless he expands that, there just hasn't been a fit. And, a team like the Tigers, maybe they'd be interested, right? They just lost out on Bregman. The Yankees have a need at third base. Hell, I just mentioned, Goldschmidt's there. But that would require Arenado saying, I want to go there. And to this point, it just hasn't happened. So the Cardinals, after saying all offseason they're moving on, they're not. For better or worse, Nolan Arenado seems like he's going to be with the Cardinals. Clayton Kershaw signed one of the odder, now that's the Dodgers. So I'm not surprised they have a really strange contract here because they want to do things that are pretty wonky. They signed him to one of the oddest contracts I've ever seen. He signed a 1-year, $7.5 million deal. Makes sense. He's going to start the season on the 60-day injured list. That's, coming back from the injury, that's exactly what he said himself. That seems to make sense. He hopes to return to the rotation late May, early June. Now, again, and as I've said repeatedly for years now, Clayton Kershaw, who's been hurt for years now, has always been effective, even through the injuries. I have no reason at this point in time to believe he won't be effective this year. Now, the problem is he going to make 6 starts? Is it going to be 16 starts? We have no idea what the workload is going to look like. As Jeff Manza said on the Elite Sports Show, that's 3 to 6 Monday through Friday on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. As he said over there, the Dodgers have 18 starting pitching options. Is anyone going to make 25 starts? Is anyone going to throw 140 innings, or are they just going to roll through guys all year long? Now, Kershaw is not going to make 25 starts, and he's not going to throw 140 innings. We know that. But, maybe he makes 15 starts, and if he does, they're probably quality starts. So he's an interesting player that can only be drafted if you're in an NL only league or if you have IL spots. Because we know let's just say best case scenario, he misses 2 months of the season. That's a best case scenario. So you can't be rostering him and just having him sit on your bench. This contract that I was talking about, $7.5 million for the 1-year deal. Then it's got all kinds of bonuses, which makes sense, performance bonuses, all that. He gets $1 million if he makes a 13th start, $1 million for a 14th start, $1 million for a 15th start, $1 million for a 16th start. Those are important starts. I get it. I understand it completely. To me, and again, Kershaw doesn't need the money, and I'm not saying he would do this, but there are absolutely people in this world that would say, I'm getting $1 million for making 13, 14, 15. I'm making $5 million for making those 5 starts. If I'm throwing 81 miles an hour, I'm saying I'm fine, and I'm making that start, right? So that's in there. He gets $2.5 million bonus if he's on the roster for 30 days. Okay. He gets a $1 million bonus if he's on the roster for 60 days. He gets a $1 million bonus if he's on the roster for 90 days. I think he can make like $17 million or something. I didn't figure it out. 15 to 17. I don't know. Something like that. Which, again, if he's healthy and all that, and the Dodgers don't care. I saw a number last night with this signing of Kershaw. The Dodgers payroll, if you include the taxes and everything that we're looking at like $392 million. That's like 7 times the bottom team in Major League Baseball. Anyway, Kershaw's got this weird contract. We'll continue to follow this story. We probably won't get too many updates because, again, we're looking at him being out for a couple of months. I would anticipate him being successful. We'll see what that looks like in the fantasy space once we get a little closer to it. A couple of stories in the bullpen. Trevor Megill, who was very effective last year as a reliever and did an excellent job as the closer after the Brewers moved on from Devin Williams because of the injury and all that. He came up to camp, did Megill, with a minor health issue. Manager Pat Murphy said that Megill is fine, and he wouldn't really tell us what's going on. What's a minor health issue? Does he have the flu? This is the thing that bothers me so much. Usually it bothers me in baseball and football because we have reports each week, do we practice, do we not practice, health injury reports, all that kind of stuff, and they're not truthful. What is the advantage in baseball? And the answer before I even ask the question is none. What is the advantage in baseball to not tell us what's going on with Trevor Megill? We're a month and a half away from the start of the season, number one. Number two, no one cares if his arm hurts, if his knee hurts, if his shoulder hurts, if his head hurts. No one cares. Is he throwing 96 miles an hour or not? Right? Is his slider breaking? And teams will note that immediately, and it won't matter if his finger, shoulder, elbow, knee, doesn't matter. They'll know from the stuff. So there's no advantage to be gained whatsoever from not being honest. So hey man, his knee's tweaked. He's fine. His knee's a little sore. So I'm sure we'll get this report soon. It's a little bit, keep an eye on it. They're saying his arm is fine. Okay. Now, minor health issue. Is the minor health issue a lat? Did he have an ingrown toenail? I don't know. So we'll have to follow this storyline. Right now, we're not thinking any doom and gloom with Mr. Megill. Speaking of bullpens, let's go to the Cubs. The Cubs brought in Ryan Pressly after he was traded from the Astros. Pressly obviously will start the season as the closer for the Cubs. We know that. Interestingly enough, Jordan Bastian, who covers the team for MLB.com, said that, Porter Hodge is going to get save opportunities too. Now, I know some people saw this and got really nervous. Oh my God, what's wrong with Pressly? Let's say a team saves 45 games. Let's say 32 of them go to Pressly. Still got 13 saves left, right? So saying that the supporting piece is going to get saves shouldn't cause anyone concern. Now, if we hear more definitively from the manager or the front office that in these scenarios, Hodge is going to do it, we're not going to pitch Pressly on back-to-back days. If we start hearing stuff like that, well, then we can reassess. Right now, I think this is just a news report. I think it's something we hear at the start of camp. I think it's truthful. There are not many teams. There's not many teams out there where someone's racking up 40 saves and no one else has any saves. Even teams that have guys with 25 to 30 saves frequently have a guy with 8 or 12 saves behind them, right? So Hodge is, was a presumptive closer until Pressly's added. He's still somebody you can put on that watch list. It's not the worst pick in the world as your last pick, depending upon your draft and your league size. You're in a 15-team league with 30 roster spots. Okay. But don't go, pushing Hodge up draft boards. Don't go dropping Pressly on draft boards because of this report. This does make sense. So I think just let's take it for what it is. Let's talk a little bit about the Rangers starting rotation. Cody Bradford was really good last season. In fact, Cody Bradford was better than I think, better than most people anticipated he would be, and certainly better than I thought he would be. 100%. And he went out there and he made 13 starts and he had a whip of 101 and an ERA of 3.5. He was a lifesaver for the Rangers. He was really good. And his reward for that strong effort to start his big league career is the fact that he probably won't even make the rotation, that he's very likely to pitch out of the bullpen for the Rangers. And this, I mean, on the surface, this makes all the sense in the world, right? You've got DeGrom, Eovaldi. They want Tyler Mahle in the rotation. Okay. John Gray, is he going to be in the bullpen or is he going to start? Right now, they're saying starter, but they're open to the opportunity of him, in the bullpen. They have Kumar Rocker, who displayed that dynamic slider last year. He's vying for a spot in the starting rotation. They have Jack Leiter. Remember back in the day, folks, Jack Leiter, top 5 pitching prospect in baseball. Okay, so both Rocker and Leiter could make this rotation. Now, Bradford could still sneak in as the 5th guy. He could end up in the bullpen as a lefty with John Gray, too. Both the youngsters, Leiter and Rocker, can make this rotation. You look at the bullpen of the Rangers, and they've got Garcia, who's a lefty, but Garcia's arm is a little, pay attention to that. They've got Hoby Milner, who's a very good reliever, not a closing option, but a very good reliever. He's a lefty. They got Jacob Latz a little bit further down. So they have 3 lefties in the bullpen. So Bradford, who is a lefty, isn't necessarily needed there. Though I will point out, Eovaldi, Gray, Mahle, DeGrom, all these guys are right-handed. So having Bradford in the rotation wouldn't be a bad thing to have a lefty. But we'll see. Reports are suggesting, though, that he could be an option out of the bullpen, according to Bruce Bochy, the manager of the team. The manager doesn't normally say things like this unless, there we go. So we'll see. A little bit of a flux there. And again, if they move John Gray to the bullpen, if Tyler Mahle has a hiccup with his arm, Bradford could be in the rotation. Bradford could end up being the 4th starter for this team. But right now, just pointing out that though he was really good last year, if you just look at the numbers and all that, you can't just go and expect him to be in the rotation this year because that's not a certainty. Speaking of starting rotations, let's go to the Minnesota Twins. The Minnesota Twins have a solid starting staff with 3 of the better right-handed pitchers in the American League, in Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez, and Bailey Ober. A lot of these rotations are all right-handed. We just talked about the Rangers. Obviously, we've talked about the Twins before, all righties. But Lopez, Ryan, Ober is a really, really good top 3. The current expectation with the Twins is that the 4th starter will be Simeon Woods Richardson, and the 5th starter will be Chris Paddock. We got a report from Chris Paddock. The manager, Rocco Baldelli, was basically saying, look, I know that Baldelli's had some health issues and all that, but, we're not overly concerned right now. He didn't pitch after July due to a forearm strain with Paddock. So you hear forearm strain, we all know we get nervous about the UCL and the elbows and all that. But he is part of the rotation as of right now. And even though he stopped pitching around midseason last year, he didn't blow anything out. He didn't have to have surgery. So Baldelli points out that this is the first time in years where he hasn't been in full recovery mode. Like, he basically just rested, his arm got healthier, and here we are now versus having to start everything from scratch because he had surgery or something like that. So though his season was curtailed by health last year, it didn't necessarily impact his offseason in the same way. If you look at Chris Paddock, he made 17 starts last year. He had 8 strikeouts per 9 innings, a solid number, 21% K rate, a little bit below the league average. I think at this point, that's probably more of who he is. There was a time where it was a strikeout an inning. I don't think we're there. I think we're basically looking at a league average strikeout arm, which is fine. He does do an excellent job of limiting the walks. He walked 21 guys in 17 starts. So he had a strike to walk rate of almost 4-1. So he continues to be that guy. He was, yet again, homer prone. He allows a lot of fly balls, so that's going to continue to be an issue. But I think Chris Paddock, with health, what he did last year, I think is a very good baseline for what he could do this year. And I would say that if he pitches as he did last season, that 4.99 ERA becomes 4.29. He's basically a league average pitcher. And, there's a lot of teams that could use a league average pitcher, including the Twins as their 5th starter. He's in that streaming conversation in mixed leagues, is Chris Paddock. Jordan Montgomery, was terrible last year. He lost 20 pounds, and I was talking to Phil Backer yesterday, our IDP guy for football and one of our producers on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. And he's like, it's embarrassing, and he's right. It's embarrassing that a pro athlete who's 32 years old, Jordan Montgomery, is losing 20 pounds in the offseason. Like, come on, man. You're 32 years old. You're a pro athlete. You're getting paid millions of dollars. Your job is to be in shape. His season, Montgomery's was famously a disaster last year. He's not even a lock to make the starting rotation this year. They added Corbin Burns. We talked about this earlier this week. I would have to put Eduardo Rodriguez ahead of Jordan Montgomery right now. If we're talking about grabbing a starting spot, Ryan Nelson's probably going to end up in the minors. Like, they have depth there, and they're going to need it at some point. But Montgomery lost the 20 pounds. Good, at least he's in shape. Well, now he's got a finger issue. Left index finger. There's a strain there. He's not going to pitch for. Here we go again. Jordan Montgomery, who for about 3 or 4 years, one of the more consistent left-handed pitchers in baseball, is just totally off the redraft radar. Totally off the redraft radar. So that is what it is, and we'll continue to watch that. But right now, I don't even. No. Just no. Aaron Boone said he had an idea why Marcus Stroman was missing time. He missed the first couple of games. He basically showed up, took his physical, and then wasn't there. Kind of uncertain as what's going on. Well, we got the report today when Marcus Stroman said, quote, "I won't pitch out of the bullpen," unquote. So apparently Marcus Stroman is demanding that he's either in the rotation or he wants a trade. And, I like things to be different in certain respects for my professional career. You probably would too, right? Do you go to your boss and say, do what I'm telling you or I'm out? No, you don't do that. I don't do that. He's due $18.5 million this year. Shut your mouth and do what they ask you to do. Number one, you're due $18.5 million. Don't be a petulant child. Number one. Number two, if you want to be in the starting rotation, pitch better. Last year he had a 4.3 ERA and a 1.5 WHIP, which is not good. He's not a big strikeout arm, as we're well aware, because he's a guy that relies on the ground balls and all that. But look at his work in the second half. It was catastrophic. In the second half last season, his ERA was 6. His WHIP was 1.8. You want to be in the starting rotation, Marcus Stroman? Pitch better. I've always been a fan of Marcus Stroman's game. I like watching him pitch, the whole thing. I am not a fan of this at all. Show up and do your job. Keep your mouth shut. Earn your spot. Garrett Cole, Max Fried, Carlos Rodon are in the rotation, period. Lucas Heel, pretty good last year, right? Clark Schmidt, pretty good last year, right? Marcus Stroman, you're not one of the top 5 pitchers the Yankees have. You're not, period. Sorry. It's just not true. You're 6th at best. So we'll see how this situation plays out. Stroman is also somebody that you're not drafting in anything but a super deep league. And even so, after this information that we're getting here, I don't want Marcus Stroman on my team. There's no telling what's going to happen. Is he going to just do it? Is he going to go on strike? Just not show up for work? Is he going to be out there pissed off all the time and be a detriment to his team? Be ineffective? And again, I totally look. I'm not saying I don't get it. Marcus Stroman's almost 34 years old. He's been in the major leagues for 10 years. He's only made 9 relief appearances in his career. I get it, but pitch better, dude. You're not one of the top 5 starting pitchers the Yankees have. Sorry. Let's see here. Dave Dombrowski, the president of baseball operations for the Phillies, said something that's kind of interesting. He talked about the Phillies wanting to get Kyle Schwarber more involved in the outfield. Schwarber, who only played 5 games in the outfield last season, meaning he's almost certainly just a UT option in your fantasy baseball league this year, is going to play a little bit more in the outfield. We'll see what that means. They want to basically get JT Realmuto some more time at the DH as he ages and the wear and tear of playing catcher, starts to catch up to him. The Phillies kind of like the idea of playing Realmuto a little bit more frequently at the DH spot, which would then mean, well, let's put Schwarber in the outfield. So Schwarber is somebody that, depending upon your qualifications in the outfield, like to play 20 games in the outfield might take a long time. Like they're not saying he's going to be the new. This is when they're going to put Realmuto at the DH, so maybe once a week kind of thing, right? I'm guessing. So if your in-season qualification is 20 games, I don't know if that changes your thought process with Kyle Schwarber. If it's 5 games, 10 games, you might consider bumping up Schwarber just a little bit because it does seem possible they'll play in the outfield and then qualify there this season. The White Sox signed Joey Gallo, another Schwarber-like offensive performer, at least he used to be. His team has obviously fallen to the point where Gallo is having to sign a deal with the White Sox, right? Gallo, who's an athletic guy. What is he, 32 years old? How old is Gallo? I think Gallo's like 32 years old. He's still a relatively young player. He's 31 years old. Jeez, he's 31 years old. He's only a couple of he's had 41 home runs, 40 home runs, 38 home runs. We know exactly who he is. He's going to strike out. He's going to hit home runs. There's a reasonable thought here that Joey Gallo will play on at least a daily basis against right-handed pitching against the White Sox. You look at their outfield, Michael Tauchman, Andrew Benintendi, Luis Robert. They're still looking to trade Luis Robert. We're hearing a lot of that. So we'll see with Gallo. AL only, he's not a mixed league guy, but there's a path to 25, 30 home runs here for him. And we couldn't have said that a couple of days ago when we didn't know, obviously, where he was going to play. Speaking of the White Sox, their manager, Will Venable, before we talk to some football with Tyler Beaker, Will Venable said that the White Sox are not going to have a DH. They're going to use that spot rotating-wise. Maybe it's Miguel Vargas one day, maybe it's Benintendi one day, maybe it's Tauchman one day, Gallo one day, Austin Slater or Michael Taylor, depending upon matchups. So White Sox doing what they can. Obviously, the only hope they have this year is to avoid 100 losses. I don't know if that's even reasonable, but that's going to be their goal here. They're adding all these veterans, Slater, Taylor, Gallo, these veterans to help at least give some stability to the clubhouse and the lineup. We'll see what kind of real impact that has, but not a lot of fantasy impact. We can say that with a pretty good degree of certainty. Happy Valentine's Day here on the 14th of February of 2025. We're going to talk some football now. The next gentleman we're going to visit with is the gentleman who usually visits with us on Thursdays, but we switched things around, and he's going to visit with us today on a Friday. So happy Valentine's Day, Tyler Beaker, FantasyGuru.com. How you doing, Tyler?
Doing good. Happy Valentine's Day to Ray and everybody watching. Excited to be here on a Friday.
Yeah, right. A little bit different here. You get to do this and then go take a nap or something. I don't know. I'm kidding. How are things going? Are you a big Valentine's Day guy? Is that something you and your lady? Is it just another day?
No, just another day. I did offer a nice gift. We got married this past spring after Valentine's Day, so I got a framed photo of our wedding as a gift for this year. But yeah, pretty low key for us. How about you?
Nice. Yeah, we're low key too. My lady's not. She's more about experiences than stuff too. So she doesn't. I used to buy her things and little knickknacks and stuff. That's not her jam. So got her a card. They're gonna do a little dinner, but nothing fancy. We're gonna do pottery tonight because we have a pottery class. So
there you go.
That's about it with us. Now we're trying to figure out what to do with the things we're making at pottery class, because those are starting to pile up too. And it's like, how many bowls do we need? So we're trying to figure that out now too, Tyler. I don't know. Thanks for joining us on a Friday. Appreciate that. Before we ask about some specifics, I wanted to just get just a general, 60, 90-second thought on the Super Bowl, and then we can put it to bed. I've been asking everyone this week kind of just to give their grand takeaway from the Super Bowl. Surprise, not surprise, went the way you expected, went crazy off the rails. What did you think?
Yeah, I was pretty happy with the bets we gave out here on this show. We went 2-0 on those bets. Excited about that. Cooper DeJean under 5.5 tackles and assists. Jalen Hurts opened the game with the anytime touchdown. Happy to provide some winners here. It was a crazy game. I don't know how you could say otherwise. Nobody expected the Eagles to come out in a blowout fashion and kick the doors off the Chiefs. It was over by halftime. The Kansas City offense went 4 and out and then a punt to start. 3 and out punt, 3 and out punt, 3 plays, pick 6, 3 and out punt, 1 play interception, 3 and out punt. It was incredibly ineffective. It was the worst first half performance by any team in the NFL this season in terms of offensive success rate and EPA per play. Doesn't get worse to do it when the lights are the brightest here in the Super Bowl. So yeah, it was a surprising game to me. I thought the Chiefs would win a low-scoring, close battle. The Eagles had other thoughts. Saquon Barkley got bottled up, but we saw Jalen Hurts play his best game of the season. When I look back at how he performed in this game, and when I look back at how he performed in the Commanders game in the conference championship round, both 95th percentile outcomes in terms of EPA per play. Hurts played his best. It's crazy to think about. He will now have another offensive coordinator heading into, I think it'll be his 8th new OC in 9 seasons, which dates back to college.
Right.
This guy has just consistently been forced to learn new plays, new terminology, everything that's encapsulated with a new offensive coordinator. They'll have to do again with Kellen Moore now leaving to go to the New Orleans Saints. Mahomes couldn't do a thing. They went 3 for 11 on third downs, 3 turnovers. They didn't get their first touchdown until the final minute of the third quarter. Shout out to Vic Fangio, who had these guys playing extremely tight zone coverage. They didn't mix things up. I think that they play a bit more man They played a ton of zone, what they normally did all season long. They played what got them there. They didn't blitz at all. Mahomes had 0 blitzes this game. They just got a lot of pressure with their front four, where Mahomes just kind of held onto the ball too long and didn't let his line give him enough time. Go Birds. Enjoy the parade today. Be safe if you're out there. That's my 90-second spiel.
That's good. I like that. No, that was good. That was a good encapsulation. I gave my thoughts for those people that missed it, my thoughts from Monday. If you want to check those out. Tyler Beaker, fantasyguru.com. Let's move on to some storylines that have kind of been out there since the Super Bowl. And, the Chiefs grabbed Tyquan Thornton, formerly of the Patriots, as a deep signing. They have like 15 wide receivers on their roster. The Patriots, we're getting reports that the Patriots are going to draft a wide receiver. And it's like, well, duh. The Patriots wide receiver room, even if they're drafting a guy, this is Drake May was effective this year as a rookie, right? Showed some skills and had some moments, but this is a rough group of receivers. Is drafting somebody going to be enough to make you interested in this, Patriots group here or through the air? Or are they going to have to make, some free agent moves? Or is it just an offense that you're just kind of on right now with the change over to Mike Vrabel under the head coaching banner?
I'd rather see them invest in the offensive line over the wide receiver core. This is a group that's pretty much going to stay intact over the next 2 years. Almost everybody in this contract that they have entering 2025 will also be there in 2026. Kendrick Bourne is the only expensive guy, $7.9 million each year. Then they've got a lot of cheap contracts with guys like Demario Douglas, last year's rookies and Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, guys that we didn't see play a ton. And then Kershaw, the wild card play that had a really promising career at LSU, kind of derailed to enter his NFL status, but we've seen some flashes from him this past year. My thought is we could see a cheap veteran signing, not a guy like a T. Higgins splash play, probably not like that degree. Right. But we could see a Jacoby Myers reunion. We saw Josh Daniels, the offensive coordinator for the Patriots, bring Myers with him to Las Vegas when he signed there back in 2022. I wouldn't shock to see Myers return to the Patriots again. That would be the kind of signing I would expect to see. But again, I'm expecting more of an offensive line kind of upgrade rather than the skill position, because that OL needs a lot of help.
Tyler Beaker, fantasyguru.com. A team that might need a lot of help, the Niners. Since we talked to you last, Deebo Samuel wants out, and he's searching for a new home. Brandon Aiyuk may or may not be ready to go at the start of the season, coming back from his knee injury. All of a sudden, Ricky Pearsall, who obviously had a rough year after the shooting and everything like that, all of a sudden he's now potentially extremely important. Maybe the Niners make a move on the market too to add a free agent or something like that at the wide receiver spot. But, are we getting really bullish now on Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings, who should be around one more season too? I mean, we could be seeing significant changes with that Niners group of receivers in 2025.
Yeah, I like the nucleus they have, though. I mean, the two guys you just mentioned, Aiyuk and Pearsall, and we can add Juwan Jennings in the mix, George Kittle into the mix. This is still a really strong group if we were to, let's say Deebo were to make a move. He did request a trade. He's entering the final year of his contract right now. Trading him before June 1st, though, would trigger a $31 million dead money hit against the cap. So I don't know if it's really in the Niners' best interest to do this. Okay. Let's say he were to be traded. I like the idea of pairing him with Pittsburgh, a team where we could see an Arthur Smith really utilize Deebo's rushing skill set. This is, again, a Steelers team that's losing both running backs, Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris, both free agents.
New Corey Patterson? Is that what we're doing here?
There it is.
A better version?
A better version, yeah. And But they need help. The wide receiver group behind George Pickens is lacking. Let's say that. So he'd be a great wide receiver 2/wide receiver 1. Neither him nor Pickens fit the mold of, in my eyes, a legitimate wide receiver 1. They're both kind of more specialists in different degrees and different capacities. But I mean, I think both could finish as quality options in an offense that needs wide receiver help. I think Deebo does exit San Francisco, but his role is really unique in terms of, I know a lot of people like to say the Deebo Samuel role, and he's going to be in that Deebo Samuel usage. I just feel like that's a tough blanket statement that not many wideouts have the physicality nor the durability to hold up to. So he's kind of a one of one in my eyes. So the teams that make sense in terms of pairings are probably going to be limited in terms of teams that he'd like to go to and teams that could utilize him to his best capacity.
It's always tough making trades in the NFL. It's not, especially when guys are making a lot of money. We'll see how that plays out for the Niners. Another interesting scenario with the Niners, Tyler, is that Matt Barrows, who's kind of the dean of beat writers for this team, was talking about, kind of the draft and this kind of stuff. And he kind of said, look, maybe the running back position is where the Niners spend some draft capital. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. I get it. But Jordan Mason's there. Isaac Guerendo was drafted last season. You still got Christian McCaffrey. Again, whoever the Niners put in the backfield seemingly has success. We understand that. But is this condemnation for Jordan Mason or Isaac Guerendo if the Niners actually, especially Guerendo, a year later, they'd be in essence trying to replace him already? This is just kind of a weird series of comments that came out from Barrows.
Well, Mason has an expiring contract. When we look at guys that are on the books for 2025, it's small. It's CMC, it's Guerendo, and it's former Jets running back Isaiah Abanikanda. Yes. So there's not a ton of people there.
Right, okay.
They're one CMC injury away from red flags. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I do understand the depth selection there, but I wouldn't be spending anything more than a day 2 pick, round 2, round 3 at the highest. There's a lot more needs for this team than running back. So I think the most likely outcome is we probably see one of the aging veterans that have been around the Shanahan system return. It could be Mason. It could be someone that spent some time in Miami. It could be anybody. But I don't think they would be spending elite capital. I might disagree with Barrows there in that statement.
So you don't think that this, even if that statement's accurate, you don't think this is, Isaac Guerendo, you suck, we're moving on. This is just, we need some depth here, we're just being smart about it.
I think that's the most likely outcome, given CMC's injury history and how thin they are now in terms of actual signed players. Depth makes sense.
Yeah, Guerendo, he obviously dealt with injuries last year, and that's kind of been a concern with him, right? But he showed the home run hitting ability. He caught passes. He was very effective in a couple of starts he made. How bullish are you in like a dynasty keeper scenario with him? Are you a buyer or are you a seller with Guerendo?
Yeah, I think it's an easy buy. He had the speed score that elevated him to, I think, round 2 selection of most rookie drafts last year. So it's not like you're able to buy him for the cheap after what we saw last year with some splash plays and some splash opportunities as the RB1. Currently, we see Christian McCaffrey going 14.4 in underdog ADP. Had to drop some best ball stats there.
Of course.
But if that ADP sticks, a round 1, round 2 turn player with CMC, make sure you cuff with Guerendo right now. Period. I don't need to let that sentence linger. that there's a after last year's injury outcomes with CMC, I think prioritizing the cuff makes a lot of sense. We saw it unfold to the very worst degree it could have last year with San Francisco. But it still rings true in terms of cuffing, and this makes the most sense and the best opportunity, one of the best systems. I don't want to say that about the line now because I'm curious to see what they do with Trent Williams.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Kerr could be over, right? Best ball, by the way, you mentioned that you're working on some rankings. How's that endeavor proceeding for the football best ball rankings?
Yep, I posted them on Wednesday. They are live over at Fantasy Guru. If you are playing on Underdog, their little board, their big board, any of the tournaments that they have featured right now, they are downloadable in terms of you being able to pull the CSV from our website and using those as your rankings instead of going by ADP. So I'd suggest that, mixing and matching ADP versus rankings, filling out your team needs as you go. I've got a few drafts under my belt already. I'm pumping the brakes though, Ray. I see you smirking. I'm pumping the brakes. I'm not going crazy right now.
Okay. So what's the guesstimate on this first round of drafts for best ball? 5 to 10 drafts, somewhere in that zone? Is that?
Yeah, I'd say definitely less than 25.
Okay.
That's my personal portfolio.
Yeah, Tyler Baker's second job is doing best ball drafts. So that's a low number for him. As we talked about last time we discussed this when he was on the show, refresh everyone's memory if they don't know, Tyler, with the Underdog Best Ball. There's like 2 separate tournaments in essence. There's the one prior to the NFL draft and the one post NFL draft.
Yeah, they bucket it pre-draft NFL Best Ball contest and then post-draft NFL Best Ball contest. So right now, everything that is being competed in has a definitive timeline of cutting off before the NFL draft. I imagine all these contests and tournaments will fill before then. The little board specifically, I think, is 40% filled. And we talked last week, and it was around 20, so that's almost doubled. Wow. People have the itch for drafting. What we're talking about here basically is we're all fighting with the same information. We're not going to have the team to player pairings, which will significantly impact the usage and the expectations. All that stuff comes after the drafts are shut off. So we're all fighting with this blanket of unknowns, which kind of makes the drafting a little bit fun and a little bit of a challenge. Take it with what you will, but I think it's its own little hurdle, and blending those dart throws and those chances you take on rookies could pay off or could be catastrophic to your portfolio.
Tyler Beaker, fantasyguru.com. Remember, go to fantasyguru.com, click that subscribe tab in the top right corner, get signed up for any of the products, including the football, which would give you access to those best ball rankings that Tyler is talking about. Another storyline, Tyler, and this is, we've kind of seen this. We're talking about the Niners, and yeah, they could add a running back. I was talking earlier about, the supporting piece and the Cubs bullpen is going to get some save opportunities. No one gets all of them. You kind of look at that in this next story in the same sense of that, same vein. There's a report from The Athletic saying that the Panthers, unfortunately, have to be back in the running back game because Jonathan Brooks injured himself again. We don't know if he's going to play at all last year. Obviously, they signed Chuba Hubbard, gave him that big money deal. He'll be the lead guy. But Sanders is likely gone. Brooks, we don't even know if he's going to play. They don't have a lot of depth here. So this is, I think, more of one of those, this makes sense versus this says anything about Chuba Hubbard directly, correct?
Yeah, I Hubbard right now, he's top 15 in ADP. They are expecting him to be the bell cow here, which makes sense. I mean, Brooks tore his ACL in week 14, expected to miss most, if not all, of the 2025 season. You mentioned Sanders. I wouldn't be shocked if they brought him back. I thought he did a great job in a part-time role there for Carolina. Hubbard, obviously getting the mid-season contract extension is huge in terms of their expectations from him and what they saw. They clearly really like him. Dave Canales, we saw him utilize a run-heavy approach in Tampa Bay. We saw it also be done in Carolina. Hubbard, I mean, he just sports all-around versatility. He's a good pass catcher out of the backfield, some quality runs on the inside, and he has some sneaky home run hitting ability too. So I think he's a great buy right now in all formats, whether you're playing best ball, you're playing dynasty, or you're just kind of like setting up some rankings for the upcoming season. Hubbard's a guy that I think is going to be one of those value plays that probably outkicks his ADP, where we're not expecting the ceiling performance from a guy as the Panthers lead back, but I could see a top 12 season for sure.
What about the Buffalo situation? They drafted Ray Davis last year. He had some moments this year. It was a nice support piece to James Cook. James Cook had a huge season, 16 touchdowns on the ground, after scoring 4 touchdowns on the ground his first 2 years. So that part of his game completely changed. He's been very effective. He's averaging 5 yards a carry, all that kind of stuff as an NFL football player. It sounds like he basically said the other day, I want $15 million a year. And it's like, okay. And we were talking about Marcus Stroman in baseball. Like, okay, I get it. I want $15 million a year too, Tyler. We'll give you $14 million. You can take 16. You're better at this than I am. I get it. But we run into this situation with running backs, and I don't think it's going to change, where when you talk about $15 million, that would be like the second highest paid back in football. And even if running backs are underpaid, should James Cook be the number 2 guy in payment? I mean, for whatever reason, the Bills don't exactly give this guy the ball 19 times a game on the ground, right? They just don't do that. Would it even make sense for them to pay that level of money for a running back, James Cook or anybody else?
No, I don't think that's necessary at all. Last year, he finished 11th in fantasy points per game, 27th in expected fantasy points per game, with touchdowns boosting that value to a significant degree. He led all backs in red zone to touchdown conversion rate, 25%, hiding the fact that he had a really subpar year in a lot of advanced rushing metrics. So I'm going to let others chase the touchdowns. I don't think he's a player I'll be gravitating toward much in early drafts, when we know touchdowns are a known outlier when looking at year-over-year data analysis. It just seems like a fool's errand chasing a guy coming off such a massive spike in touchdowns, like you mentioned. And the fact that he's also sharing a backfield with Ray Davis in the rushing element, Josh Allen in the rushing element, and then Ty Johnson in the receiving element just seems like you're paying a premium for a guy that does produce spike weeks, but those spike weeks are buoyed by the touchdowns. So if those touchdowns dry up, we're probably going to be left with RB2 outings, which I'm not really willing to pay. I think he's like RB14 right now in ADP. That's top end RB2. I think you may be left disappointed.
Without the touchdowns, he starts looking an awful lot like Najee Harris. I mean, in terms of the overall, it's like
at least Najee had volume.
Yeah, so it's weird. It is what it is. Let's move on to the wide receiver position. Talk about that, Tyler. There's been a lot of talk, obviously, this offseason, since last offseason, about Rashee Rice and what's going to happen, suspension otherwise. And he got hurt, so that storyline kind of disappeared. But we don't know what's going to happen with him after his issues with the law. We also don't know what's going to happen with the issues with Jordan Addison. I think this storyline has been less discussed. Jordan Addison's got a DUI case, and they're putting it off. And sometimes guys get into court real quick, and other times it takes forever. But the bottom line is Jordan Addison's got a DUI case. The NFL doesn't like it when you get a DUI, as they shouldn't. They're changes in Minnesota anyway. It's very unlikely Sam Darnold's going to be back, so they're going to have a new quarterback. Addison's coming off a really impressive season. How do you view Addison if you're drafting best ball, if you're looking in dynasty keeper scenarios? Because it seems pretty likely that at some point in 2025 you could be missing some games with the suspension.
Yeah, I actually forgot about that, so I appreciate you bringing that back up. But I will say, similar to Cook, Addison's a guy that's been really reliant on touchdowns as that touchdown outlier performer. 2023 we saw it, and I was super surprised to see it again in 2024 given the QB change.
Right.
We'll have to give a lot of props to the Coach of the Year, Kevin O'Connell, who continues to utilize a top 6 pass rate over expectation year after year after year. Does that carry over with J.J. McCarthy? I would expect so, but that's not a certainty. There's definitely some guesswork there. Consider me in the market of downgrading Addison relative to ADP. His current ADP is like 53.5. I think I had him in like the 65 range or something in my rankings. Add in the possibility of a suspension, and you can push him down even further. Dynasty-wise, I wouldn't have let's say it's a 4-game suspension. I wouldn't have that impact my dynasty outlook for Addison whatsoever, though.
Okay. Tyler Beaker, fantasyguru.com. We go to the Seattle situation, and Tyler Lockett's on his last legs as an NFL player. He's had a great career, but he's on his last legs as an NFL player. Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I know you love, great season. He's trending upward, all that. And then there's DK Metcalf, who, as we've talked about on and on and on, is an Adonis. He's huge. He's fast. He's had all these great seasons at the NFL level. Just always seems to leave us wanting more in the fantasy space and in the real world. And you hear Clint Kubiak saying he's going to get him more involved. And you hear the Mike McDonald saying we got to do a better job getting him involved. To me, it's always one of these scenarios like, yeah, we were saying this in weeks 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, 8, 9, 10. Like, we all know you got to do this. Are they actually going to do it? Is this a DK Metcalf problem? Is this a coaching problem? Is this a Geno Smith problem? Like, why aren't they doing what seems so obvious to do and what they're talking about now doing, getting the ball to DK Metcalf?
I wish I had an answer for that, because we would be at the picket lines, hold up rallying signs saying, why are you not doing this? I will say I envision Lockett out of the picture. He's got a $30.9 million cap hit, final year contract. He's likely gone.
Yeah.
Metcalf and JSN, I think they're a good 1-2 punch. But this team under OC Clint Kubiak, I am expecting a lot of Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet as the focal point.
Right.
So to see an uptick in volume for Metcalf, that's really all we're asking for, because he does everything else. He's got the big plays. He's got the touchdowns. It's really volume that's been holding him back. I don't see that changing. I thought last year, if anything, it would have changed with Ryan Grubb coming to the scene. We saw an uptick for a little bit there, but then they kind of reverted back saying, we got to get Kenneth Walker more involved. So I think it's still going to be a run-heavy approach here with this offense. We saw the Saints, when everyone was healthy in the year, Kamara putting up video game-like numbers. Probably going to see a split between Walker and Charbonnet to that degree, but it still points to the arrow is still pointing us towards the run game over guys like Metcalf and JSN, who I think they're fine clicks at ADP. I just don't think they're likely candidates to greatly eclipse their ADP and be must-have fantasy options.
Tyler, what about the situation with Travis Kelce? What are your general thoughts? Like, he said he was going to play next year, then he kind of waffled on that, and he's going to think about it. And obviously, the Super Bowl didn't go as planned for him, and though he almost caught 100 passes, his season really didn't go as expected. And, where are we at with Travis Kelce? I mean, he returns next year. He's a tight end 1. Okay, duh. But what are your thoughts on Travis Kelce and, what your anticipation is for him moving forward in the NFL?
I feel like I'm kind of right in line with ADP right now, where Kelce's ADP is about pick 100 overall. For those that aren't actively jumping in the best ball streets, that kind of tells us that there's a lot of uncertainty. Take a guy like Travis Hunter. He's like 112 in ADP. Another guy with massive uncertainty. Kelce could be retiring. Kelce could be playing again. I don't know at this point. I'm not currently drafting him. He's not a target of mine. I think the Chiefs' best path to success is utilizing Rashee Rice like they did the first opening 6 weeks and trying to get Worthy to double down on what we saw the final 6 weeks as that other weapon that they leaned on quite a bit. DeAndre Hopkins, I envision being out of the picture. Hollywood Brown signed a 1-year prove-it deal. Didn't really get a chance to prove it. He didn't get to play until week 16. We saw some hits week 16 and 17. Not really a noise maker, a needle mover in the postseason. So I think they get a reroll on that, probably at a hometown discount, quote unquote hometown. But that would be the offense I see moving forward, where they lean on those 3 wideouts and Kelce kind of taking a back step in terms of the target pecking order. We didn't really see Kelce involved a ton until Rice went down. In that, I think it was that singular game where Rice went down, where we saw Kelce put up a massive ceiling outing. But then later, it was a lot of 12 personnel with 2 tight ends, and we saw Noah Gray putting up the random touchdown performances, the spike performances. He was the DFS punt, the darling that many went to.
Yep.
I don't know, man. I think this Chiefs team needs to reinvest in offensive line, and the weapons, I think they're fine. I don't really care what happens to Kelce because he hasn't been a needle mover in terms of like living up to ADP or returning high ceiling fantasy outputs. So I'm just going to let others take him. I think the answer is probably going elsewhere with Kansas City.
It's amazing that we can field out. He got 97 passes. Like he legitimately almost caught 100 passes, and he got in the end zone like twice. Like it was a weird season for him.
Yeah.
Final question before we hit the chat room, Tyler. The Saints. Kellen Moore's in town, right? Things are changing here. They got to decide who the quarterback is. They got to decide, is Chris Olave going to be able to stay healthy? There's questions about Taysom Hill. Is he going to be back? Is he going to retire? Are they going to retain him? Or are they going to drop him? Lots of changes in Saints land, and lots of changes will be forthcoming here. Kind of your thoughts here. Are they moving on from Taysom Hill? Is it time? Do they have to bring him back given the way this offense is constructed? Are you bullish at all on what you see right now? Are you nervous? What are your thoughts of the Saints?
I don't know what the heck they're going to do with Taysom Hill. This is a weird albatross of a contract. I think it's honestly guesswork. I don't know what they're going to do. They've got so much dead cap space from guys that aren't even on the roster.
They do every year, right? They've been doing this for like a decade.
Yeah, and I think the due comes. What's it called? The bill comes due. I think that's the saying right now that applies here with guys like Michael Thomas still getting paid, Jameis Winston still getting paid. Yikes! Like they got dead money for like Cam Jordan. Like there's so many expensive plays that they just need to eventually eat. And the dead cap thing is you can move around and manipulate the cap. Dead cap, you can't. That's like a block. It's just there. So if we're looking at a bar graph, that block of just dead cap is not going anywhere. It's just a black stain. You can't move, or you got to work around. So what are we going to see? A bunch of cheap contracts, some UDFAs, some good players being let go, some good players being unable to be signed. I just think there's a lot of questions with New Orleans, which makes them when you look at range of outcomes, who knows what to expect here. Kellen Moore has got himself in for one. So hopefully they're giving him a long leash, allow him multiple years to try to rebuild this thing in his own vision. Starts at the QB position. When he was asked about Derek Carr, he gave Derek Carr's done well when given opportunities. Didn't really point one way or the other.
Right.
Kind of a very PC answer.
Right.
We'll see what happens. I'm excited for the New Orleans saga. I just wished, I'm sure they wish as well, they could just hit the fast forward button like you can in Madden.
Going to I haven't played Madden forever, by the way. Are you an active Madden player, Tyler?
Active NCAA 25 guy. The college football. Yeah, I haven't bought Madden in 3 years. Every time I want to, it just seems like it's the same thing, copy pasted. So give me the college football instead.
Wow. All right. Yeah, I remember back in the day on my Sega Genesis, I'm old school. But yeah, I was playing with my nephew once a couple years ago, and it's hilarious. So the Nintendo had 2 buttons, Sega had 3, and now they have 9. There's joysticks, and there's it's up here, and it's I'm like the old guy, like my dad when I was a kid, which I never thought I'd be because I had pretty good dexterity and coordination. Yeah. I can't hit all these damn buttons. so I'm not playing it in the modern day. David's got a question about the Bears situation. Ben Johnson obviously comes in. Lots of excitement there after all the good that has happened with the situation with the Lions. And David's asking, what impact will the hiring of Ben Johnson have on quarterback Caleb Williams, who was very effective as a rookie, had long stretches where he didn't turn the ball over, which is a huge key to success in the NFL. What are your thoughts with the offense of the Bears and the help that Johnson will bring to Caleb Williams?
Yeah, let's hope that we get some excitement here, because this is a prominent coaching coordinator that we've been waiting multiple years to become a head coach, paired up with a round 1 selection here, round 1 pick 1 in Caleb Williams. I'm excited to see what happens. I think the most likely impact will be in the quick passing game. We got to get rid of the ball quick. Use your slot receiver. Use your backs out of the backfield. One thing that Caleb really struggled with in the first half of the season when working with Shane Waldron as offensive coordinator was holding onto the ball too long. We sort of saw a brief spell where he changed it under Thomas Brown and then kind of reverted back to it as the season progressed. So the big thing I want to see out of Caleb, and Johnson has done a great job with this with Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jahmyr Gibbs is an outlet receiver too, and the tight end Sam Laporta. Copy and pasting that over to the Browns the Bears offense, and seeing these guys utilized and leaning more on their yak skill set. I'm curious to see what they do with the slot receiver. I've mentioned this multiple times on the show, where I think DJ Moore would be a great full-time swap to the slot. Like Keenan Allen go. He's 32, 33. His best days are behind him. He went from having a tremendous final season in LA down to a very pedestrian 2024 campaign with Chicago. I'd like to see him elsewhere. And I'd like to see DJ Moore operate as a slot guy, that Amon-Ra role where we're looking for 100-plus catches. That would be what I would like to see. In terms of Caleb's outlook, he's currently QB 12 right now in fantasy ADP. That's kind of where he was last year at this time too. So we didn't really see any movement there relative to others. I would expect, if anything, probably a better year in year 2, given familiarity with the league, familiarity with the pace of play, and just a better offense overall. And hopefully some continuity where he has the same OC for a full 12 months. That's what I'd like to see.
I mean, 20 touchdowns and 6 picks as a rookie. It's pretty good. I mean,
that's not bad.
It's pretty good, and like I said, he threw 250 passes without interception, something like that at some point. So, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. That AP probably goes up as we get closer to draft day, you think? The Ben Johnson hype will lift him higher, you think?
I think if they add a significant playmaker, it could definitely spike Caleb's ADP. But I mean, the current landscape right now with Odunze, DJ Moore, Kmet, the backfield they've got, there's some reason for optimism. Yeah.
Tyler Beaker of FantasyGuru.com. You mentioned, Tyler, that your best ball rankings are available over at the website right now. Again, click that subscribe tab in the top right corner of FantasyGuru.com's page. What else are you working on here? Season's over. You're doing nothing. No, you're not doing nothing. What are you doing now that the regular season and the postseason is over in the NFL?
I am itching to start doing our rookie profiles that we do every year over at Fantasy Guru, where we're diving into their college stats, their college film, and looking at how that can translate to the NFL. We'll probably have those up maybe in the next 2 weeks. We'll start unloading them. But I'm already starting behind the scenes, looking at prospects and what I'm expecting for the upcoming year. NFL scouting combine is right around the corner, and I think it's 13 days, I believe. So that'll be another big milestone in terms of the NFL offseason. We've got our UFL products, which is being posted, going to launch in the very near future with our guys Jorge Pucks and DFS Marlin, 2 very big UFL guys. Excited to see their content and follow their plays. But yeah, that's basically what I'm looking at here in March. We've got free agency also right around the corner. I plan on doing an overhaul of my dynasty rankings, which I don't really publish, but I'll talk about as we get on to more video shows and things of that nature. Yeah, there's still the NFL is a 24/365 business. There's always something to talk about.
Yeah, DFS Marlon Mark Hogan. I mean, he's terrific at what he does. We've had him on the show. He's been on Sirius XM. I don't know how much money he won last year. I remember he won a $50,000 big hit on the
multiple times.
He used to work in the XFL, I think, back in the day. So he's a good resource, folks. Even if you're not Mr. U or Mrs. UFL, we got people that can help you there at FantasyGuru.com. Subscribe tab, top right corner. Send a note to support@FantasyGuru.com. Support@FantasyGuru.com, and able to help you out there. I'm looking at his page right now, Mark's page. Yeah, it's $54,000 here on the top. Must be tough winning $54,000. What would you do with $54,000, Tyler, if you had it?
Oh boy, wife and I were just counting up how much debt we're in. I'll just say we'll be tackling that.
Okay. Hopefully it's less than 54,000, Tyler. But hopefully we'll keep our good thought for you both. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate you coming in. Have a nice weekend, and we'll talk to you again next week.
All right, sounds good. Have a good one, everyone.
He's Tyler Baker. I'm Ray Flowers. We'll be back on Monday here for the show, 12 o'clock Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Don't forget to watch the listen to the Elite Sports Show on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio with Jeff Mans. That's Monday through Friday at 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For Tyler, I'm Ray. We'll be back on Monday here on Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com.